Hello, BookTube. Well, you're not going to believe this unless you're sitting down and looking at a calendar. But today is the 28th. Monday is the 1st of May. April is already over. Almost over. We have one weekend left in April. Uh, and as usual, on any given time where I'm reaching this point on the calendar, I'm wondering where the month went, and I'm looking over my reading. Because we all read in our different ways, right? We all have different kinds of things that we want to do, different schedules or the lack thereof, different subject matters, or ranging all over. And my bailiwick is mostly the new releases in the American book market in the 15 or 16 genres that I'm interested in reading. That's impossible. I freely admit that. You cannot possibly do that. But I think I come closer than anyone else. And I love the feeling of coming close. I love the feeling of the illusion of keeping my nose just barely above water. Which means that most of the reading I'm doing in any month is new releases for that month. There's a vast amount of stuff that I find secondhand. There are a good number of books that that were published a long time ago that, for one reason or other, crop up to my attention, and I like to stay open to those. BookTube is a big part of that, but also lots of other things too. I mean, I go to the Brattle Bookshop at least once a week. I go to charity shops and thrift shops. So I'm always looking at the books there. You never know what's going to strike that urge for a reread or an older thing that I haven't read. But the bulk is the new releases in that month. I even organize my so-called work bookcase that way. And so, naturally, when we're heading into the last weekend of a month, I look at the new releases for that month and start panicking. I start doing all sorts of triage in my head about all the books that I haven't read. There'll be carryover, of course. There always is. I'll read April releases in May. But I wanted to show you, as a sort of a panicked Friday read, I want to show you some of the books that are April releases that I still have to read. Starting with this one by Nandini Das. This is Courting India. It's about the Raj and the Mughal Empire and the building of the British Empire in India. It's a deeply interesting subject for me. It took me a while to get the finished copy, and I haven't got around to it yet. That's going to be the refrain with all of these things. Other than this thing, this is by Alice Slater. This is Death of a Bookseller. I couldn't resist it with a title like that. This is the story of a bored lifer at a regional branch of a bookstore who's a big fan of true crime. And when a new employee manager type shows up at the bookstore to revitalize things, they become objects of uncomfortable fascination to each other. Maybe uncovering a true crime in the process. I'm always up for a novel set in a bookstore, so we will see. This next one, the reason why it has waited until the last weekend of the month and may wait longer than that is because there's nothing about it that gets me interested. This is the next of Brandon Sanderson's mystery projects. This is the Frugal Wizard's Guide for Surviving Medieval England. And it strikes me as twee and also mere verbiage, right? Taking off from the Truman Capote, the famous quip, that's not writing, that's typing. At a certain point, I have to wonder about that, unless with Steve Argyle is doing a lot of work here. And I don't know if that is. I doubt that that's the case. These secret projects aren't exactly filling me with joy for the written word. So this one I have had access to. I haven't been motivated to get to it, but I will. This next one is by Katie Porter, the U.S. Congressperson Katie Porter, who is a fascinating figure. She of the famously of the whiteboard. Usually, when she wants to pinion some corrupt executive or witness of some kind before one of her committees, she will bring her whiteboard, and she has the numbers at her command. It's pretty wonderful to watch. I don't know how effective it is, but I don't know how effective anything in American government is. And she wrote a book called I Swear, Politics is Messier Than My Minivan. And there she is with her whiteboard. And this also has been a source of hesitation. Katie Porter is not herself a particularly important member of U.S. Congress. I would argue that there's only one. genuinely important member of U.S. Congress, and that is Donald Trump's stand-in, Marjorie Taylor Greene. The only person in Congress, I believe, who is, well, not only is the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think Katie Porter has a whole book's worth of stories to tell. Now, I may be wrong about that. Probably if she were here in this room, and I would probably have endless questions for her, and I would feel different. I also don't know that she has the time, or let's just say the writing chops, so I don't know what I'm reading here. It strikes me that it would be very thin. I could be wrong about that. Happy to be wrong about that. And then we have Into the World's Great Heart. This is the selected letters of Edna St. Vincent Millay. I should long since have got to this. This is one of my favorite American poets, and let's just say I have my doubts about this collection. I have not been overly reassured by American letter collections in the last 2-3 years. I don't want to make a sweeping, old man yells at clouds generalization like the level of scholarship seems to have gone away. But I haven't been impressed with... I'm going to go at this book for its readability. For you. Not for me. And not for someone else who's read everything about Edna St. Vincent Millay, but for the general reader. And I have found that a lot of letter collections that I've read in the last couple of years have just failed that test. They've just simply failed it. Nothing annotated, things annotated incorrectly or in a slipshod manner. All sorts of stuff taken for granted that the general reader will not take for granted. Now, maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe those aren't who this book is for. But it seems like a horrible waste of a missed opportunity if it isn't for them. But that isn't the main reason is that I don't have a finished copy. I will get a finished copy. Probably it will have to hold over until May. I will, like I said, I'm not doctrinaire about this. So if I don't get to everything important in April, I will hold it over into May, and I'll do the same thing in May for June, no doubt. This next one, I have a file of this. The only reason that I haven't read it is because I'm waiting for the finished copy, and I haven't received it yet. And this is Simon Winchester's new book, Knowing What We Know, which is the kind of thing that his books have sort of become, or maybe they always were, a big sort of amorphous meditation on some aspect or thread running throughout history. It's never evenly done, but it can be very, very interesting. And in this case, it's the transmission of knowledge, how knowledge is transmitted. And I have dipped into the file that I have, but I want to read the book completely. And I don't think the file is complete. If I don't get to it this weekend, I mean, it has today and tomorrow to get here. If it doesn't, then I will just hold it over. Then this next one I've held off. I have the finished copy of this thing. I just have held off on it because it's become more and more of a contested subject, not only in American society, but also in my own head. This is Lessons from the COVID War by the COVID Crisis Group. And I don't think you need to be a MAGA hat-wearing QAnon supporter to contend that the COVID Crisis Group got at least as much wrong as it got right. Now, we might look back from 20 years from now and say there was no chance that they couldn't. There was no way to avoid that. But I don't know. I don't know about that. COVID is one of the most important things to happen in our lifetimes. I'm definitely going to read books like this, what we learned, especially from groups that were on the front line of collecting data. But I don't know what's happened here. I'm trying to understand COVID in 2023, and I'm failing rather badly. I've been out and about in public twice this week. No one was wearing a mask. Thousands of people are dying every day from COVID, but no one's wearing a mask. Now, was the thing that broke the back of that once vaccinations became commonplace? I mean, what about in your own area? Does anyone wear a mask anymore on public transportation? On buses? Ever? Anyone do that? And do you have any idea what your own neighborhood, what your own region's COVID fatality rate is? And do you have information as to whether or not that fatality rate is mostly among the unvaccinated? I don't know. I don't know. I'm fascinated by this subject, particularly because it is so open-ended. I don't see, anecdotally, the data tends to say something else, but anecdotally, I don't see that being vaccinated or double or triple or quadruple vaccinated protects you in any way from contracting COVID or transmitting it. Now, the people who hear that and who are very much pro-vaccine, as I am, will say, yeah, well, we're talking about fatalities. But what kind of a vaccine does so little? Maybe one that was rushed into production to do anything. I, you see, the debate rages on in my mind. I don't know if this will not be weighing in on any kind of debate, but a lot of the lessons learned from COVID, I'm probably going to have my issues with. We will see. We will see. I'm definitely going to read it. Anything COVID related, I'm going to read. Then we have something. This is by Jamie Green. This is The Possibility of Life. And I haven't got to this thing yet, and that is just a shame because this is right up my alley. This is a book about exactly this. What has humanity always thought about non-Earth life? Going all the way back in history, but extending to the present day, where we're finding thousands of exoplanets that, as far as we can tell, are perfectly Earth-like. We don't have the ability to detect life on those planets, but we have the ability to detect a lot about their atmospheric composition. We know a lot about their relationship to their relative stars. Do those worlds have life? Do any worlds in our own solar system have life? This probably has a whole bunch of stuff in it that I'm going to be really, really interested to read. I just haven't got to it yet, that's all. Then this next one, this will be a tough read. But at least the author knows what he's talking about, which so many people who write about this subject do not. The author is John Ward, and this is his book Testimony, Inside the Evangelical Movement That Failed a Generation. And he was literally inside that evangelical movement for 20 years. 20 years ago, and has now spent 20 years outside it, studying it from the outside. And has a lot to say. I gather that this book has a lot to say about how that movement has changed, how it has become politically weaponized. It's interesting to me. I haven't read the book, so I don't know what the title means by failed a generation. I am assuming that the title means that evangelical movement failed a generation in that it failed to act as an evangelical movement and instead acted as a political movement, a science-denying movement, a rights-denying movement, a humanity-denying movement, as opposed to bringing souls to Christ, which I guess would be success if that evangelical movement were going by its own tenets. But I don't know. The author might have something cannier in mind with the title. And I don't remember off the top of my head what kind of a writer this author is, so I don't know what kind of a job this book will do. But talk about right up my alley, it definitely is. And the same thing with this last one. There are lots of other books, but this one, this is The Way Home. It's 2 novellas set in the world of the Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. Last Unicorn, one of the greatest fantasy novels of the 20th century. And a book that I love. I actually love this author. I think that I've never read a book by this author I didn't like. I myself think that A Fine and Private Place is a better book than The Last Unicorn, but they're both great, and that should have made this catnip. I should have gone straight to it. But instead, one thing after another has cropped up, and I simply have not got to it. So those are some books that I need to get to in April. Those will count as a panic-stricken Friday reads. There are, of course, a lot of other April books, especially a lot of self-published books. Every month I start off by saying, I've got to do better with self-published books. Indie books. I've got to do better with them because I'm a huge fan. I champion them. I look forward someday to joining their ranks. And yet, there's so much stuff that's out there that looks interesting. It's easy to do. It's easier than anything else to get. No worry about worrying about finished products or anything like that. Just put it on the iPad. And yet, there's so much out there that I haven't done yet. So there'll be a lot of carryover into May. But I wanted to do a kind of a month's end Friday reads. And I wonder, since it is a Friday reads, if you have anything like the same thing that happens to you, where you realize, I had a TBR, but the month is almost over. This is the last weekend of the month. The weekend tends to be stereotypically when a lot of you get a lot of your reading done. Do you ever do this? Do you ever experience, gripping at the wheel to avoid a 10-car pileup right at the end of the month? How did your month go? Do you ever have this sort of thing where you look at the calendar and realize, oh my God, there's still 4 or 5 books I need to read? It'd be nice to know that I weren't alone, but I'm sure this is going to happen next month as well. But anyway, I'm going to get to all of these things. The ones that I have, I will get to this weekend. The ones that I don't have, I will make sure to get, and I will get to them. I will fill in the blanks during May. But I wanted to share. I don't know. I don't. Ordinarily, a Friday reads would be sort of sprawling all over the place, but right now, all I'm thinking about are the April books that I haven't got to yet, which is just a terrible thought. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.